What's up, YouTube? It's PandaCat doing a tier list while we wait for Alec to get out of his game or whatever he's in right now, because I do want to queue with him. We're going to be doing a strictly ADC tier list today, not like all the gods like we did with Alec, simply for time efficiency and things like that, right? And my webcam's pretty small because I just moved the last second, so it's okay. Pretty much it'll just be my thoughts on like how they are competitively. Well, not too competitively. I'm not going to base it off SPL or anything, but how I think they can be or how I think they should be rated and like in ranked and stuff like that. We'll just start it off with whatever I see first. We'll start off who I think are the best gods. It'll be a little bit easier to kind of base things. So I think Heim, after his nerfs, is probably an S. I think Uller is an S. Let me just like eyeball this first. And then I can kind of adjust it from there. Do this. What's kind of troll about this role is that I think most of the gods past like pretty much these top 5 are like just good. Like they're always just good. You know what I mean? Like, so it's gonna be a little awkward to do an entire tier list. I even have mages in here, but okay. So we'll go over this. I think probably like this. Chernobog is a little better than Apollo would be. Honor's probably an A+. Cupid is an A. Chiron's definitely an A. Rama is going to be an A+ after his buffs. Soul, I think, is a C. Izanami, I think, is a C. Olorani, I think, is a B+. Cern is going to be better after his buffs. These are solid. Kronos is definitely worse. Scotty is okay. X-Ball's A. For sure, A+ probably. Is this like accurate? Medusa's probably okay. I think this tier list is pretty good. Let's just go over the gods and why I put them where I did. I'm probably gonna do some moving around as I think about it more. So S+, I'm not gonna say it's game winning if you get these gods, but I do think these gods give you ways to win the game. Uller's pressure early on is extremely useful. And if you utilize it as you should, you could definitely win the game. We've done it before in the SPL, and it's doable in ranked. Like, the god is just very strong and axe kills somebody, or it forces an active. And just having that much power at the tip of your fingers with one god who is just, like, not really bad at any stage of the game is pretty stupid to me. So, for that reason, I think Uller is S+. Just through all the play we've seen in comp and in ranked and everything, I think it's very easy to say that he's probably one of the best ADCs in the game right now. This is post-Uller nerf, and I still think he's fine as long as you go on the trans build. He still hits super hard. His early game is untouched. And I think he's just OP, to be honest with you. Jing Wei, I have it S+, simply because, I mean, this god is just too good, man. Like, this god is actually just so stupid. Like, her 1 is still broken. Her 3 is still broken. She can't get knocked up. She can't get killed. Like, it's impossible to dive her. She has the best CC in the game. She's got built-in crit. She's got the best pass, like one of the best passes in the game. Like, this god, if you don't put down from levels 1 through 8, just expect like to be feeling bad. Like, this god is super strong. I recommend her to anybody who's trying to get through ranked or is trying to get better at ADC. She's a very simple god with like a pretty like low skill ceiling in terms of like what you can do with the character. So she's just a really good hyper carry. She's just strong, man. She's just strong. Like, I just hate playing against this god, and I think she's just a good god. Heim, we put an S simply because I don't think he's quite as good as these two characters. I think he's still very strong. The nerfs hit him kind of hard. He got a lot of good nerfs, and he's probably going to be nerfed more in the future. I think the main issue with Heim is that, like, he's not a playmaker like these two gods. You know, like, he's just like one of those gods that you farm with and you just kind of chill with. And you can get a lead, you can make plays, but it's not as easy to make plays as these other gods, or even some of the gods below him. And I think that's kind of what drags Heim down. Like, aggro crystalling in is very hard against players who are wary of it. People who now know how Heim works in the two through the TP, like know his ult coming, just like a readable character. He's kind of been around a good bit now, and I think he was very strong, but a lot of nerfs hit him, and he's definitely not as good as people think he is. For this reason, he's S. He's probably under these two, just because these two can actually just win an entire game. I don't think Heim's capable of doing that on his own, but he's a great character nonetheless. A+ is kind of like you could probably pick these hunters and never be upset about being on them. Like, Anhur is just a good god. I've been over it in a lot of videos. I've made a lot of videos on him, and I've talked about him a bunch, where he's just a solid god who's pretty good into most of the meta gods. Like, he's fine into Ullr, he's fine into Heim, he's fine into Jing, he's fine into everybody on this list. He's not very easy to 1v1. He's got a great lane, he's got great push. He's just a very solid god who's, like, pretty strong, but you're not going to really feel super impactful with Anhur unless you're kind of W king, because that's when he really shines. Being able to use the ult aggressively, being able to jump in aggressively, get these nice impale plays and things like that is when Anhur's going to really be feeling great as a character. And unfortunately, you don't really get to see that too often in competitive. In ranked, he's definitely a lot better than he is in comp, just because games are a lot more hectic. You get to kind of like make more cheeky plays, more cool plays, things like that. So in ranked, he's definitely fine. As in comp, I don't think we've seen much on her, and it's pretty much due to the fact that he's just not better than the gods that you pick over him. In fact, I think Anhur should probably be an A, because I think I'd rather pick all these gods over Anhur. Chernobog, we've been seeing a lot of love in. I personally don't think Chernobog's that great, but simply due to the fact that he actually is a good character. I just don't like the way he plays. I think he's fine. He's obviously got great split push potential. He's got a good steroid. He's very hard to kill. He's good with the crit build, which is a big perk, because crit is in the meta at the moment. And he's just like a fine god who's not as strong as these three, in my opinion. He's a lot easier to shut down. He's a lot easier to punish. But he is just solid. And if he gets to late game, he can definitely shit on people in team fights, which is why I think he's a good god. And yeah, he's A+. Hachi, another extremely safe god who's a pretty good lane bully, who can kind of stay in lane forever due to his passive and kind of just pressure you out all the time because he's never His 1 is probably one of his worst ability. Well, his 1 is definitely his worst ability, but even then, he's got like so much poke, so much mana sustain. He can usually stay until he gets a full depth, which is a big deal in the long lane. His ult's really good for getting away and for going in. He's really good against most of the top hunters because his pressure is pretty nice. And I think he's just like one of those safe gods that you can kind of just pick whenever. And like I said, like this entire tier of gods is like you can probably pick them and just be like, I'm happy with being these gods. Like, I don't know. These gods are just good, right? Up next is Hu Yi. Hu Yi, I think, could be higher. But I also think, like, it's kind of where he belongs. Like, he probably could be an S. But he's, like, just A+ in my eyes. He's better than Rama and X-Ball for sure. Maybe that means Rama and X-Ball should be an A. But Hu Yi is just, like, a good god. He's got insane freaking, what's it called? He's got insane buff clear. He's got really good team fight. He's got a strong kid. He has a good escape. Well, not a good escape, but a fine escape. He's hard to gank. He's hard to 1v1. He's good into crit as well. One sec. Excuse me. He's really good to. God, I lost my train of thought. He's a good 1v1er. He's got a fine lane. He can get pressure with his ult. The build paths are actually great for Hu Yi right now. The pen build and the crit build are both very, very, very good on him. And he's just a good god. Like I said, just a solid god that I could definitely pick pretty comfortably in ranked and in this PL, just being like, I'm Hu Yi. Like, that's fine by me. I'll be Hu Yi here. Rama. I put Rama here in anticipation for his buffs. I think the buffs to Rama are going to make him a lot stronger. He's going to feel a lot better to play because he's more centered toward the astro arrows now. Like it was before, he was mostly like, got to use your arrows efficiently and things like that. But now it's even more so. He's obviously got the buffs to his 2, where they moved the passive from the 2 to his actual passive and then gave him a passive on his 2, like another passive. There's scaling on the cripple shot, and you can cancel, which is a big deal. Every astro arrow you hit takes away 0.2 seconds off your ultimate, which is also a huge deal. So I think Rama's going to be a lot better after the buffs, which is why I'm putting him here. Currently, he's not bad. He's got a pretty strong early game. Like his 1 through 5 is super sick because he can clear very well. The build paths are really good for Rama as well. The problem is that little mid game, like blinds, like not blind spot area, but just like that like dull area where he's not a great 1v1er and he feels really easy to pressure. But I do think the buffs will actually help that a good bit. So yeah, after buffs, Rama will be a good god for sure, for sure. X-Ball. X-Ball is an interesting god. He's been nerfed a couple times. His ult is kind of just a big dark space at this point. But he's still a good god. He'll always be a good god. The ult is just so strong, no matter how many times you nerf it. Just not being able to see in a team fight, in a team fighting game, is just such a big deal. On top of that, they buffed the bolas, so now he's incredibly annoying to lane against. I think the only issue with X-Balls is 2 and how hard it is to hit consistently. But he's got a strong lane. He's not very easy to dive. He's got a CC Moon Dash, which makes him pretty safe. And you could probably pick X-Ball pretty comfortably and just like pretty highly, pretty comfortably, and feel good about it. So that's this is the A+ tier, and I think this is pretty accurate actually. Over in A, we have on her Cerneros, Chiron, and Cupid. I was talking about on her before, and I moved him down a list because I don't think on her is quite as good as any of these gods here. I think he's fine, like I said, and I'm gonna do an updated top 5 tier list soon. But I think Honor's just like, he's just fine, but he doesn't feel good to pick early. You know, he doesn't feel good to pick early. He doesn't feel like he's very impactful most of the time. And you really need to be W keying, like I said earlier, and getting your abilities off and hitting your stuns and impales to feel really good. Other than that, he's pretty easy to dive. Because he obviously, I mean, the impale's fine for diving, but his jump's pretty easy to read. And most of the time he has to up down, so it's pretty easy to play around. And yeah, I don't know. I don't think he's that great, but I also don't think he's bad, which is why he's an A. Cerneros, post buffs, I think Cerneros jumps up a couple tiers. I'd probably put him in B or C before. But with the pen buff on his one, Autumn Stance is going to make his team fight a lot stronger with his backliner on top of objective shreds, which wasn't an issue before, but now his objective shred will be even better. Couple that with the fact that he's already been seeing some play, and I think he's like okay. A buff definitely bumps him up a tier or two. I think Cern's just kind of underwhelming sometimes because his 2 doesn't really do any damage when it's maxed. His 1 is pretty good, but it's really not great. He kind of has to aggro dash in and make up for his loss of damage in his kit. And his ult is just kind of terrible. In fact, if they were to rework Cern ult or change it somehow or buff it, make it faster, do more damage or something like that, I think the guy would be a lot better. But as I stand right now with him, I think Cern is a B or A to maybe A+ after the buff after I play him. Not sure. Chiron. The reason I have Chiron here is because I think Chiron's actually a good ADC, and I'm not kidding. I play him a lot. And on stream and ranked and things like that. And I think this god has a lot of potential. The only issue is, and this is a common issue with all the gods under A+, is that you don't find yourself picking these gods in many scenarios because you're probably just on one of these 8 gods. Post buffs, this god will be more prominent, of course, but you're probably just on one of these 8 gods already. So that's why you don't really see any of these gods. But I think if you were to go bottom 2 or something, or top 3 Chiron into a comp that's fine, you'd feel good about it. And I think Chiron's actually pretty underplayed, and he's pretty strong. If you go Maces, you can kind of one-shot everything with your ult and your 2. So yeah. Cupid, another god, probably underplayed a good bit. I've played him, I think, once or twice in SPL. Once or twice, I don't remember. But also just a fine god. His hearts are good in team fights. His build path's not bad. He does a lot of damage. If they were to tweak his ult a little bit and buff him, I feel like this god can easily beat S. I'm not kidding. Like, if they were to fix his ult, or not fix it, just buff it to where it either pop faster or did anything like cripple or I don't know, root something. Well, it already cripples, sorry. Root or, like I said, pop faster or anything like that, this god would be a lot better. Currently, at the moment, it's very hard to confirm his ult, especially in team fights. A lot of gods have slow immunity or are building the movement speed build now, so his ult's a good bit weaker. But in general, I think Cupid's fine. Could be played a lot more, but just isn't because one of these gods are picked at that point. Apollo, I think Apollo's just one of those gods, man. Like, I don't know, I get asked about Apollo a lot, and I feel like Apollo doesn't do anything better than any of the other DCs do. Anything better than... Wait. Doesn't do anything better than the other ADCs. Yeah, sorry. If you want to split pusher, you should just pick Chernobog. He doesn't do more damage than any of these hunters. He's got a mez. I guess that's it. He's got a mez. Like, I don't know. Like, Apollo's just fine, but underwhelming in most scenarios. Is easier to bully in lane. Not good into the meta characters. Just very rarely finding myself, like, wanting to play an Apollo game simply because he's just not great. That's all. That's all. That's it, dude. That's it. Freya. Freya's an interesting one. I actually kind of want to put Freya higher, but you can't, simply due to the fact that her laning phase is kind of abysmal. There's a lot to punish. She's just not a good early game god, which is obviously makes sense because she's an insane late game god. But seeing how in terms of like ranked and competitive, how much pressure is drafted nowadays. If you're picking Freya, you're either picking it into a very, very niche comp where you think she could be played, or you're picking it knowing that you're probably just going to get camped and killed a bunch. So putting her any higher would probably just be wrong. But I do think if you get ahead on Freya or get a good start on Freya, this god is easily S+ to the point where she can literally carry an entire game and kill everybody on her own and just carry. But the problem is getting from levels 1 through 10 and not falling super far behind or not being a detriment to your team. So, like I said, if you can get ahead on this god and you can do it consistently, let me know how you're doing it. Let me know what cheats you're using, and then I'll put her in here. But until then, she's here. Oleron I would put higher as well, but simply due to the fact that he's not a good long lane mage. He's very easy to chase down. He doesn't do a lot of damage. In fact, his power spike before, like, his power before Bancrofts is kind of shitty. He's got good early game pressure, but besides that, he doesn't actually do much. Like, I don't know. I just feel like this god's very easy to pressure. There's like so many ways to play around his kit. His healing doesn't really do much. His lane pressure doesn't really resort to anything due to the fact that it takes so long to get Bancrofts online. And you can't really run it down with Oleron, so there's a lot of gods that are meta right now that can kind of just like kite away from him and poke him out. And on top of that, it's very easy to set up ganks on mages in the long lane, which is why you don't really see mages too often in the long lane, because last season they were very powerful, their build paths were good and things like that, and purple buff didn't have attack speed on it. And this year it's more of a dual lane, so mages don't get drafted as much just because they'll get kind of shit on if they did. Gonna be honest with you, we saw Vote play Raijin against Sanguine, and I'm not gonna like base my opinion on mages just off that set, but yeah, I mean, we saw what happened. Okay. Artemis probably belongs in C, and AMC probably belongs up here. In fact, let's go over AMC. I didn't know where I put him. I didn't mean to put him down so low. AMC is one of those gods that could be insanely strong. Simply, probably like Freya, probably like Oleron. I should probably put Apollo below a level. I don't know why it's B+. AMC is just one of those gods that I think could be insanely strong, just like the other two people in this tier list, or on this tier. But simply, you have to put too much into them to get them running, right? Like, you have to draft it on the perfect comp, you have to have the perfect scenario, you have to have the perfect start, you have to kind of rely on the fact that you're not going to get camped, things like that. And simply for that reason, I think he's not as good as he could be. Though I do think AMC can be really strong, it's just too hard to make him work. So I put him pretty low on my tier list, and that's the reason for it. Apollo we just went over. I did not mean to have him B+. I don't think Apollo does anything particularly well besides perhaps split push, but then just pick Chiron instead. Medusa should be higher if they just change her dash. Honestly, Medusa could be a lot better. Her dash is so easy to body block. Like, I don't know how many times I've been completely away from somebody and I've still dashed into them. Very frustrating dash, very, very, very frustrating. But I don't know. She could be good, but she's just not. Her one slaps super hard, but her early game pressure is kind of bad. She kind of needs to go. She doesn't feel too great going dev, so she goes trans. So I don't know. The power spikes are pretty late. She doesn't really do much early game, and she's kind of just a detriment to the team. To be honest with you, if I have a Medusa on my team and she's not ahead, she's probably just getting shit on. So I wish they were, or they are going to buff her sometime soon, or at least change her dash or make her dash like an Amma dash where you could go like clip people or things like that, or it's just faster. I don't know. But yeah, until then, she's just not great. Neith, another god that I wish things were faster on her. Her 2 is super easy to cancel. Her backflip is super easy to read. Obviously doesn't go over walls, so she's not really going anywhere when you're diving her. Her damage simply isn't enough to peel a diver. Her ult is very useful, so if you can utilize it well, she could be a good god. But in terms of just getting W keyed at and like having nothing to do about it, I think Neith is just not good. I think if she got buffs, she could be really good, but she hasn't gotten any buffs in a long time, and I feel like she's too hard to pull off, and she's just not a great god. Although, only because this is for an ADC tier list, for my role, I do think Neith is probably fine in mid. Scotty. Ooh, Scotty. Another one of these gods where she should probably be B+. Scotty is another god that if you could pull off, if you can get her into the mid game, she is a truck. She's got a little bit of a weird like laning phase where if you're not comfortable with playing against a Scotty, she could shit on you. But she also can get shit on pretty easily. She's very easy to gank. She's been through a lot of nerfs at this point. She's just not like a great god. Like I don't see myself picking Scotty over any of the other gods on this list that are higher than her. She's just too inconsistent. Her damage can feel very lackluster. If she's not hitting carries, she's actually not doing too much damage. The root can be good if you use it well, but you know, it's pretty hard to utilize it very well in team fights because you're not really going to be hitting backliners too often. I don't know. I wish she was better. She could feel really good if you get ahead, but that's really just not the case with her. She's very bad against meta supports as well. So, yeah, we're just going to leave her here. On to the last tier of this tier list, the C tier. These are gods that you pretty much don't want to pick unless you have a strat around it. Like, straight up. If you have a strat around it, then maybe. But these gods just don't really do anything. Like, Artemis, I wish she was good. I should probably put her even lower. Like, she's just too hard to get through the early game. She's so easy to kill. She's terrible, terrible, terrible through the early game. Her mid game's good, but getting her there is so much harder than it should be. Maybe with the Boar AI, she'll move up to like a B, maybe a B+. I don't know. But she needs a lot more buffs than she's getting right now to see any play at all, competitively or in ranked. I feel like if you're picking this god, it's like the same as Freya, but even worse. You're just expecting to get shit on, to be honest. I myself, being a freaking Artemis advocate, I love this god, but you know, I don't see her being played ever, and that's just how that works. So yeah, Kronos, another god who I just don't think you should ever pick, to be honest with yourself, or to be honest with you. He doesn't do enough damage. His power spikes are terrible. His ult is not good. He gets shit on by most of the meta hunters, or literally any hunter above him. Like, I don't know. This guy's just terrible in my opinion. I've played him a good bit of times, but if you play him in ranked or in a high-level rank match or even in this PL, you're probably just going to get, like, taken advantage of. You're going to lose purples. You're going to probably die in lane most of the time. And his build path's pretty bad at the moment, simply because items are so expensive. The rings got nerfed, which made him a lot worse. And I don't know. This guy's just bad. Like, he doesn't do anything better than anybody else. So, yeah. You're shit, Kronos. Stay C. Izanami. Izanami is one of those gods that I've talked a lot about, where I think she could be good if she has a strat built around her. The United actually built a strat around Izanami against us in the SPL, and I was impressed to see her do work. She did work in teamfights and things like that. Otherwise, this god is terrible. Her autos are bad, her 2 is bad, her ult is bad, her dash is bad. Like, all parts of her kit are bad unless you're literally utilizing that pressure that she gets early on perfectly, just snowballing through the entire game and just kind of like winning the game from her pressure, which isn't even that doable because she just gets ran out by supports. And yeah, if you're picking Izanami to have fun, you're probably a masochist. There you go. And last but not least, Soul. I think Soul is probably B. I don't think she's C. I think Soul is, she's got some buffs. I think the buffs were not what they needed to be. I think the 3 change is actually really nice. You can actually just 3 like archers and they won't spread out like that, like they did before. But this god, she feels so lackluster when she's like an item in. Like, compared to the other hunters, she just doesn't do anything, dude. Like, she really doesn't do much. Her 2 doesn't do a lot of damage. Her ult is terrible to hit. Her 3 is good, but I find myself dying even in the 3 so much. You can kind of just keep running at her. The only time I see this god being good is if you utilize your pressure like extremely well, like I said with Izanami. She could be a lane bully, but even then, she does just get ran at through the early game. Her mid game is pretty dog. Her late game's okay. If you, I think in a perfect world where you use her early game perfectly, literally perfectly, then she could be good. But until I see somebody do that consistently, I think this god's not good. And I think that is the last god on this list. Maybe Set. I've seen a lot of people saying Set for the sake of people in my chat asking me to do Set. We'll put Set in here. I think Set's probably fine. He's B, maybe B+. Probably not. Probably B. This god needs a comp draft around him and needs to be picked into the best gods. Or the best scenarios. Gods that he can kind of run down. Picking set, you have to keep in mind that you are throwing away all range damage from the ADC role, on top of having a pen build, and on top of having like a crit character, right? Like crit's pretty prevalent in the meta at the moment, and not having somebody that can build that is kind of abysmal. So yeah, I guess if you're Cyclone Spin, you could probably make it work. You can maybe make it work. He hasn't had much success with an SPL. I don't think it was due to him or his individual performances, but I think this god is very easy to shut down. People know how set works nowadays. You don't just like walk into a team fight and get a pentakill anymore. He's been nerfed a good bit, and I think the god's okay, just not very strong. That's all. I think that's everyone. I'm not gonna do like the niche hunters, like gods that you might get 1 out of 10 games, like Persephone or Poseidon or like I don't know, Bacchus or something like that. So that's the up-to-date current tier list by me, my honest opinions on most of these gods. Let me just take a double peek at it to make sure we're good. I think we are. If you did enjoy this tier list, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I love all of you. Click that notification bell in the top right corner of your screen to know when I'm uploading my next video. And that's it for me, guys. I love you all. Until next video. Peace.